All right, welcome back to the deep dive. This time, someone sent us a letter.
Oh, yeah?
It's from Empower Oversight,
Okay.
their government watchdog group. And this letter, it brings up some pretty serious questions
Mm.
about, potential conflicts of interest at the SEC.
Oh, wow.
We're talking cryptocurrency,
Hmm.
big money, and maybe even some, not so fair play
Oh, Keith.
during the Trump and Biden administrations. It gets kind of complicated.
Yeah, sounds like it.
So buckle up.
Okay.
This one's going to be a long one.
Right.
So Empower Oversight is basically suggesting that certain cryptocurrencies,
Mm-hmm.
like specifically Ethereum and XRP,
Okay.
might have gotten a preferential treatment from the SEC.
Hmm.
And they think this could be because of, personal connections and financial interests and stuff.
Oh, so like kind of a rigged game.
Yeah, exactly. Like maybe
Yeah.
the playing field wasn't exactly level,
I see.
So for anyone listening who might not be super familiar with crypto,
Yep.
could you give us a quick rundown of what Ethereum and XRP are and why they're such a big deal?
Sure. So think of them as two different systems that are kind of competing to change how we handle, money digitally.
Okay.
So Ethereum, which was created by Vitalik Buterin,
Uh-huh.
it's almost like, the Android of the crypto world.
Okay.
It uses its own digital currency called Ether,
Right.
and it lets developers build all sorts of different applications on its platform.
I see.
And then there's XRP, which was created by Ripple Labs, and that one is more designed for really fast and efficient, cross-border payments.
So like a supercharged version of the SWIFT system banks use now.
Exactly, yeah, like a digital upgrade to that whole system.
Okay, that makes sense. So essentially they're both kind of going after the same thing, trying to revolutionize how we think about money.
Exactly.
But back in 2017, when this whole story kind of starts,
Uh-huh.
the crypto market was just exploding, like crazy popular.
Yeah, it was wild time.
What was the atmosphere like back then?
Oh, man, it was like, it was a total gold rush, but, a digital one.
Uh-huh. Right.
Everyone and their grandma wanted to get in on the action,
Sure.
but no one really knew how the government was going to handle this whole new technology.
Right.
Ethereum and XRP, they were gaining a lot of traction, for sure,
Wow.
but there was definitely a rivalry brewing between them.
Okay, so then this is where the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance comes in.
Right.
Can you tell us a little bit about this alliance and why it matters so much to the story?
Yeah, so basically it was this powerful group of companies all
Mhm.
coming together
Yeah.
to promote the use of Ethereum in the business world.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about like Microsoft, JP Chase, even some really big law firms.
Wow. Big players.
Yeah, the whole thing was actually kind of shrouded in secrecy at first,
Oh, really?
which made people wonder, what they were really up to.
So like a backroom deal kind of vibe?
Yeah, potentially.
Okay, so this is where things start to get really interesting. Because one of the key figures at the SEC at the time was this guy named William Hinman.
Okay.
He was the director of the Division of Corporation Finance.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, he was in charge of overseeing the whole financial world, including this, brand new crypto space.
Yeah, a big responsibility,
Yeah.
especially with so much money pouring into crypto.
Right, exactly.
And this is where Empower Oversight starts, raising some red flags.
Right.
They claim that Hinman had a big conflict of interest
Oh.
because of his previous job at this law firm called Simpson Thacher and Bartlett.
Hold on. How does his old law firm tie into all of this?
Well, Simpson Thacher had some really influential clients, and some of them were also members of the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance, including JP Chase.
Oh, wow.
Plus, on top of that, Hinman was getting these huge monthly pension payments from Simpson Thacher,
Right.
way bigger than his salary at the SEC.
Wow, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, and Empower Oversight thinks that this basically created a big incentive for him to favor Ethereum.
So you're saying he was making a ton of money from a law firm whose clients were directly involved in the industry he was supposed to be regulating fairly.
Exactly, yeah, that's the issue.
That does seem like a problem.
And to make things even more complicated,
Yeah.
the SEC's own ethics officials, they had actually warned Hinman about this.
Like they told him this could be a conflict of interest.
Yeah, they even told him not to meet with people from Simpson Thacher.
Wow. And he ignored all that.
Well, according to Empower Oversight's letter, yeah, he basically ignored those warnings.
Oh, geez. Not a good look.
No, not at all. He went to meetings, he was emailing back and forth with people from Simpson Thacher, even with folks from Consensus, which was a company founded by Joseph Lubin, who co-founded Ethereum.
Okay, so while the SEC is trying to figure out how to regulate all this crypto stuff, He's over here meeting with all the people who have a horse in the race.
Exactly. And we're talking about billions of dollars at stake here.
Right, this is starting to feel like, one of those financial thriller movies.
Yeah, kind of.
So, okay, then Consensus, they decide to launch this project called the Brooklyn Project.
Right.
And it was specifically designed to, address regulatory concerns about token sales. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
But remember that lawyer, Patrick Baraducci, who joined Consensus from Sullivan and Cromwell?
Oh, yeah.
He becomes the co-chair of this whole Brooklyn Project thing.
Interesting.
And guess what?
What?
Sullivan and Cromwell, that's the same law firm where Jay Clayton, the SEC chairman himself, used to work.
Oh, wow. That's a pretty big coincidence.
Yeah, it's almost like they were trying to, play both sides.
Right. Get in good with the regulators while also pushing for what they wanted.
Yeah, exactly.
Very strategic.
So now Clayton's in the mix, too. What was he doing behind the scenes?
Well, Empower Oversight found evidence that Clayton had this private meeting with some representatives from Andreessen Horowitz.
Who are they?
They're a venture capital firm that had invested heavily in Ether.
Oh, of course they did. Everyone seems connected to Ethereum in this story.
Right. It's a small world, I guess.
So what happened in this meeting?
Well, Clayton basically asked Andreessen Horowitz to put together a proposal for him.
A proposal for what?
For how, existing law should apply to these things called utility tokens.
Okay.
And a lot of people think that, Ether would fall under that category. And this proposal, they got some help drafting it from Perkins Coie.
Another law firm.
Yeah, and guess what?
Right.
They also had ties to the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance.
Oh, come on.
And this proposal, it specifically said that Ether shouldn't be considered a security.
So Clayton's asking the people who stand to gain the most from a certain ruling to tell him what that ruling should be.
Yeah, pretty much.
That doesn't exactly scream impartial regulation, does it?
No, it definitely raises some questions.
So it seems like Clayton wasn't exactly trying to be objective about Ether.
Yeah, it's like he already had his mind made up.
And then, to top it all off, there's Hinman's big speech.
Ah, yes, the free pass speech.
The one where he basically declared that Ether wasn't a security.
Yep.
And that it didn't need to be regulated like one.
Right, which caused a whole lot of controversy.
What was going on behind the scenes before that speech?
Well, remember how there were those internal discussions at the SEC about whether to even include that statement about Ether in the speech? The Office of General Counsel, the SEC's own lawyers, they weren't so sure about it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they said it could limit the agency's options in the future, if they wanted to change their stance on Ether later on.
Interesting.
So even within the SEC, there were people raising concerns about Hinman's approach.
That's kind of wild.
Yeah, and of course, Hinman didn't mention anything about his ongoing financial ties to Simpson Thacher during his speech.
Oh, so he left that part out.
Yeah, which just added fuel to the fire.
Of course it did.
And as you mentioned, that speech sent shockwaves through the crypto world.
For sure.
Ether's value, it went through the roof.
Really?
Oh, yeah, and a lot of people saw it as a clear sign that the SEC was giving Ethereum special treatment.
Okay, so this is where the story takes a sharp turn.
Yeah.
The SEC decides to go after Ripple, saying that XRP is a security.
Right, and this was in December 2020, just a few days after Hinman left the SEC and went back to Simpson Thacher.
Okay, now that timing seems pretty suspicious.
It does, doesn't it?
Almost like they were waiting for him to be gone.
Yeah, exactly.
And naturally, XRP's value took a nosedive after the lawsuit came out.
Oh, yeah, it plummeted.
And that's when Joseph Grenfest, he was a former SEC commissioner, he wrote this letter to the SEC saying that Ether and XRP should be treated the same way.
Right. He was like, what's the difference?
Yeah, exactly. He pointed out that the agency hadn't really given any good reason for treating them differently.
Yeah, he basically accused them of playing favorites.
So, to recap,
okay,
we've got Hinman potentially using his position to help out Ethereum. While he's getting paid a ton of money from a law firm connected to the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance.
Right.
Then we've got Clayton making public statements that don't match up with what he's doing in private.
Yep.
Meeting with Ethereum backers, basically asking them to tell him how to rule in their favor.
Exactly.
And then the SEC targets XRP, but gives Ether a pass.
It's a mess.
It really makes you wonder if the agency was really trying to be impartial.
It's definitely a tangled web.
And that's where Empower Oversight comes in.
Yeah.
Determined to untangle all of this and expose what they think is, corruption and favoritism at the highest levels of government.
Like the crypto detectives in the case.
So it's a real David versus Goliath situation.
Right. Taking on the SEC.
Yeah, but Empower Oversight, they're not backing down.
Nope, they're digging in.
They've been filing Freedom of Information Act requests, taking the SEC to court to get records. They've even gone to the SEC's Office of Inspector General.
Wow, they're not messing around.
Wait, so there's an actual investigation going on?
Yeah, and it's in the final stages right now.
Oh, wow, that's huge.
Empower Oversight, they're demanding transparency.
Yeah.
You know.
Of course.
They want the Office of Inspector General to release their findings.
Yeah, let's see what they found.
And shed light on what really went down.
This could have massive implications for the whole crypto industry.
Absolutely.
And for, the public's trust in government regulators.
For sure.
This is a story we'll definitely be keeping a close eye on.
Me too. It's going to be interesting to see what happens.
So where do we go from here? What are the potential outcomes of this investigation?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Could this lead to actual charges against Hinman or Clayton?
It's possible, yeah.
Or maybe the SEC gets hit with some serious disciplinary action.
Right, or even congressional hearings.
And then there's the impact on the crypto industry itself.
Yeah, that's a whole other can of worms.
Could this whole thing lead to stricter regulations, maybe even a crackdown on certain cryptocurrencies?
It's possible.
Or could it actually help the industry by, bringing more clarity and certainty to the market?
It could go either way, really.
It's a pivotal moment for the crypto world.
For sure.
This case could either help it gain legitimacy and become more mainstream, or it could send it back into the shadows.
We'll just have to wait and see.
All right, well, this has been a wild ride so far.
It has.
We're going to dive even deeper into this whole thing in just a bit.
Okay.
But first, we got to take a quick break.
All right.
Stay tuned. We'll be back in a moment.
Sounds good. So before the break, we were talking about all of the potential outcomes of the SEC investigation. One thing we should probably talk about a little more is, Empower Oversight's accusations.
Right. They didn't just, raise concerns.
No, not at all.
They're actually alleging that Hinman broke the law.
Yeah.
Like criminal charges.
Yeah, they specifically mentioned the criminal conflict of interest statute.
Oh, wow.
It's serious stuff.
So what does that even mean? What exactly is a conflict of interest in this situation? And, why are Hinman's actions so problematic?
Okay, so in a nutshell, the law basically says that government officials, they can't get involved in matters that could, directly benefit them financially.
Okay, that makes sense.
Empower Oversight is arguing that all of Hinman's meetings and, communications with Simpson Thacher and consensus, all of that, they say it crossed the line.
So they're saying he was using his position at the SEC to help out Ethereum and potentially Simpson Thacher's clients.
Right, and getting those huge pension payments from Simpson Thacher, that's what really makes it a problem.
Because it shows he had a financial incentive to favor Ethereum.
Exactly.
So if Empower Oversight is right, could Hinman actually face some serious consequences?
Absolutely.
Like prison time?
Yeah, potentially.
Wow, this just keeps getting more intense.
It does, doesn't it?
What about Clayton? Could he get in trouble too?
Well, Empower Oversight's letter, it mainly focuses on Hinman, but they do bring up some concerns about Clayton's actions.
Like his connections to Andreessen Horowitz and that whole proposal thing?
Exactly, and they also highlight how his public statements sometimes contradicted what he was doing privately.
Right, like talking tough on crypto, but then meeting with Ethereum backers behind closed doors.
Exactly.
So it's possible that the investigation could uncover evidence that Clayton was also involved in some shady stuff.
It's definitely possible.
But it's probably too early to say for sure whether he'll face any consequences.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see what the investigation finds.
This whole thing really does feel like a legal thriller movie.
I know, right?
Allegations of crimes, conflicts of interest, a watchdog group going up against a powerful government agency.
It's got all the elements.
You mentioned earlier that the impact on the crypto industry is still a big unknown.
Yeah.
Could this whole mess actually lead to some positive changes in the long run?
That's an interesting question.
Like maybe some good could come out of all this bad.
It's possible.
I mean, it's definitely exposed some weaknesses in how we regulate crypto.
It has, for sure.
So maybe lawmakers will start pushing for stricter rules and more oversight.
That's definitely a possibility.
And while some people might not like that, it could actually be a good thing.
I think so, yeah.
Because more clarity and certainty could help the industry gain more trust and legitimacy.
Exactly.
So instead of hurting crypto, this whole ordeal could actually help it mature and become more mainstream.
Yeah, I think that's a possibility.
Okay, so let's go back to Clayton's actions for a minute.
Sure.
You mentioned that Empower Oversight found evidence that he met with representatives from Andreessen Horowitz. the venture capital firm that invested heavily in Ether.
Yeah, and they're a big deal, not just some random firm.
Oh, I know, I was just thinking that.
They've been some really successful companies.
Yeah, they have a reputation for picking winners.
Exactly. So their involvement with Ethereum adds a whole other layer of complexity to this story.
I mean, what does it say about the SEC's impartiality when the chairman's having private meetings with people who have such a big stake in the outcome?
Yeah, it definitely doesn't look good.
Like, are they really committed to regulating fairly? Or are they just trying to help out their friends?
Makes you wonder.
And then there's the fact that Clayton actually asked Andreessen Horowitz to write him a proposal on how to apply existing law to these utility tokens.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
And we know that Ether would probably fall into that category.
All right.
And the proposal they came up with help from Perkins Coie, another law firm tied to the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance, it basically said that Ether shouldn't be considered a security.
Yeah, it's like he wanted them to give him the answer he was looking for.
Exactly. It doesn't seem very objective, does it?
Not really, no.
And this whole concept of regulatory capture, it's pretty scary when you think about it.
It is, yeah.
Like, what's the point of having regulations if the people in charge are just being influenced by the industries they're supposed to be regulating?
Right, the whole system breaks down.
And then there's the timing of the lawsuit against Ripple.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
December 2020, just days after Hinman leaves the SEC and goes back to Simpson Thacher.
It's hard not to see that as suspicious, you know?
It's like they were waiting for him to be out of the picture before they made their move.
Yeah, it definitely lends support to the theory that they were targeting Ripple while giving Ether a free pass.
And then Joseph Grunfest, the former SEC commissioner, he writes that letter saying that Ether and XRP should be treated the same way.
Right, he called them out.
Yeah, he basically said, what's the difference?
And he's not just anyone. He's a former SEC commissioner.
Exactly. So his opinion carries a lot of weight.
It does, for sure.
So it seems like the SEC has a lot of explaining to do.
They do, yeah.
This whole thing has just revealed this giant web of conflicts of interest and questionable actions.
It's a mess.
What do you think the long-term consequences will be?
Well, a lot depends on what the Office of Inspector General finds, obviously. But this is definitely going to have a big impact on the SEC's reputation, how they do things in the future.
Yeah, for sure.
If they find wrongdoing, there could be internal reforms, maybe stricter ethical rules, maybe even Congress could step in and change the laws to address this whole revolving door problem.
And what about the crypto industry? How will this affect them?
Well, it could lead to clearer regulations, more oversight, which some people might not like.
Yeah, but it could also help the industry gain more legitimacy.
It could.
This whole story, it's not just about Ethereum and XRP.
No, it's bigger than that.
It's about the integrity of our entire financial system.
Right.
And whether we can trust the people who are supposed to be protecting it.
It's about fairness, transparency, accountability.
Exactly. And this whole thing with the SEC, it's just one example of a much bigger problem.
Yeah, this kind of stuff happens in other industries too.
And it's a reminder that we can't just assume that the people in power are always acting in our best interests.
Right. We have to stay informed. We have to hold them accountable.
And we need organizations like Empower Oversight to keep digging and exposing the truth.
Absolutely. They play a vital role.
So what's the one thing you think our listeners should take away from all of this?
That's a good question.
What's the most important lesson here?
I think it's that we can't afford to be naive.
Okay.
When it comes to things like finance and technology, the stakes are incredibly high.
Yeah, they are.
And the world of cryptocurrency, it's still so new. It's changing so fast.
Right.
As it becomes a bigger part of our lives, we need strong regulations. We need people watching closely.
To make sure everything's fair and that investors are protected.
Exactly.
So it's not just about, geeking out over the latest crypto trends. It's about understanding the bigger picture.
Yeah, the implications for our society, our economy.
And recognizing that we all have a role to play in making sure things are done right.
Absolutely. We can't just leave it up to the government or the industry to self-regulate.
So this case, it's a perfect example of how money, power, and technology all come together.
In ways that aren't always transparent.
Yeah, it can get pretty messy.
It can.
So we need investigative journalists, we need watchdog groups like Empower Oversight, and we need an informed public that's willing to ask tough questions.
Exactly.
To hold the powerful accountable.
To demand transparency.
That's how we make sure that this new world of cryptocurrency develops in a way that benefits everyone.
I completely agree.
This has been a really eye-opening discussion.
It has.
And we're not done yet.
No, we've got one more part to go.
We're going to talk about the revolving door phenomenon and what all of this means for the future of crypto regulation.
I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Before the break, we were talking about how, how important watchdog groups like Empower Oversight are. But this whole story also brings up this thing called the revolving door in Washington.
Yeah, it's kind of like a game of musical chairs.
Right. Like we see Clayton and Berger, two of the main people involved in the SEC's crypto stuff.
Right. They end up at firms with ties to Ethereum after they leave the agency.
Yeah, it's a pretty common pattern, unfortunately.
So Clayton, he goes to work for One River Asset Management.
Yeah, as an advisor.
And One River, they had invested a lot in Bitcoin and Ether.
Yeah.
And then Berger, he joins Simpson Thacher.
The same firm where Hinman was a partner.
Right. And we know Simpson Thacher was deeply connected to the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance.
Exactly.
So it's like they regulate the industry and then they go work for the companies they were regulating.
Yeah, it's definitely a problem.
It just looks bad, you know?
It does.
Like it makes it seem like maybe the SEC wasn't playing fair.
Right, like maybe some favors were exchanged.
But is this just a crypto thing? Or does this revolving door happen in other industries too?
Oh, it's definitely not just crypto.
Really?
Yeah, this is a big issue in all sorts of industries.
Like what kind of industries?
Oh, finance, pharmaceuticals, defense, you name it.
Wow, so it's a systemic problem.
It is, yeah.
So what can we do about it?
Well, that's the tricky part.
Yeah.
There are some things we could try, like maybe stricter rules about what former government officials can do after they leave office.
Okay, so like maybe they can't work for companies they used to regulate for a certain amount of time.
Right, like a cooling off period.
That makes sense.
Or maybe we could strengthen the ethics rules for government agencies, make sure they're really enforced.
Yeah, that could help.
But it's a tough balance,
How so?
Because if we make the rules too strict, it might discourage good people from working in government in the first place.
Right, that's a good point.
It's a complicated issue, for sure.
Yeah, well, this whole deep dive has been pretty intense.
It has?
So many twists and turns, so much to unpack.
It's like a real-life conspiracy thriller.
So as we wrap things up here,
yeah,
what's the one thing you want our listeners to remember?
I think the biggest takeaway here is that we all need to be paying attention
to what's happening in the crypto world.
Yeah, and to how it's being regulated.
Because it's not just about making money or investing in the latest hot coin.
Right. It's about the future of our financial system.
And about making sure that this new technology is used in a way that benefits everyone, not just a select few.
That's what's at stake here.
So this whole saga with the SEC, it's a wake-up call.
It is.
We can't just assume that everything's fine, that the people in charge are always doing the right thing.
We have to be vigilant. We have to ask questions. We have to demand transparency.
And we need to support organizations like Empower Oversight, who are doing the hard work of holding the powerful accountable.
Absolutely. They're playing a crucial role.
So to everyone listening, stay informed, stay engaged, and keep those critical thinking caps on.
Because the future of crypto, and really the future of our economy, it's up to all of us to shape it.
That's a great point to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.